Hello and welcome to another Demon 212 Wii U review. Today I'm going to be getting slated for hating The Legend of Zelda The Wind Waker HD, which if you've never played it before, it's obviously your typical Zelda game. It's an adventure, action-y RPG thing. It's like no one never really seems to classify Zelda as one thing because it can't really be classified as one thing. You've got people who say it's an RPG because it's a role-playing game, then you've got people saying it's an action-adventure, and it's one of them. I've never been able to really clarify the genre myself because there are a lot of different aspects to it. The closest I think it comes to is an action-adventure, because it can't just be called an adventure game, because really, adventure games are things like Tales of Monkey Island and Myst and things like that. It's, either way, at the start you've thankfully got different setup of controls. You can play just with the Pro Controller if you want to, or you can play with a gamepad. I'll be honest, I've not actually played with the Pro Controller, simply because when you play as the gamepad, you can play the whole game on the gamepad itself, which is incredibly cool. It's one of the redeeming features about the game, and I'll get to that in a little bit. You might have noticed that at the start I basically said I'll be getting slated for hating the game. Unfortunately, I absolutely hated the GameCube game, and I got the Wii U version because of the improvements, and I'll do my best not to just stand around, even if I just like slowly walk or something to move towards something, because there's a lot of improvements to get through. But mainly, the two biggest ones are the ones that people are only really mentioning, and that's what's annoying me, because it's not giving you the full story of what's different. It's being defined by its speedy sailing mechanic and the streamlined TriForce quest, and there's so much more than just them two things. So there's a lot of people out there saying, well, is it really worth buying just for two improvements? Well, maybe not, but there's a hell of a lot more than two improvements. So you can now have 12 pictographs. You no longer need the bug from the Forest Haven section to complete your pictograph, basically, to get the deluxe version. Photos will be rated the moment you take them, so that you know instantly if you've done a good enough job, which that is huge for a lot of people, because a lot of people did complain that it's one of the things they were worried about, and like maybe having to go back and not save, so maybe having to go back to certain sections that you only get one chance to get the picture of, and so that instantly increases that. Obviously they've added a lot of Miiverse stuff. I've never used the Miiverse in any game or on the Miiverse itself, ever. I have no interest in it. I never will have interest in it. As far as I'm concerned, the Miiverse is Nintendo's own Facebook. It is not for me. It will never be for me. So I can't see how that impacts the game. All I know is what it does. You can share your pictograph pictures, you can share messages, you can send messages in a bottle and they'll wash up on shore, so you can have things, and you'll get banned for doing pretty much anything mild, even if it's a spoiler, unless you opt into the spoiler version, and it's things like that. So that's pretty much the pictographs and the Miiverse part explained about the upgrades. Obviously graphics have been upgraded, and the game always looked beautiful except for the water. Now it looks even more beautiful except for the water. I still think the water might as well just like not be there. They could have probably just painted the water black and it would have still had as much defining characteristic feature. Instead, now you get slightly brighter blue and slightly grey sludge, and slightly, it's just one of them. The lava looks okay, because the lava's actually got some rocks and things in it, and it gives it some detail, but the water, it's just got white lines on it, and it's just awful. It always has looked basic and awful. So I've mentioned the pictographs, the Miiverse, the graphics. In the quest, obviously, they've added the hero mode. For those who don't know, hero mode basically makes the game insanely difficult compared to what it used to be. You can't get hearts from conventional means like cutting down bushes or smashing rocks or anything. You can only get them via potions and collecting hearts and things like that. That's the only way to fill them up again, or obviously I'd imagine dying and starting up again. I don't know about the dying thing because I've not played the game on hero mode. I'll get around to that in a minute. The treasure charts in the game, they've added 5 more of them to replace the fact that the new streamlined Triforce quests there. Basically, on the original you had to get 8 charts and then you had to go and fish for 8 pieces, and it was absolutely horrendous. It really was. That there was just no fun to be had at all. So now, to replace the fact that there's 5 fewer charts to collect on the game, just for those people who really did love going around and sailing and collecting things, you know, the sadomasochists of us out there, they've added 5 new treasure charts to replace those, so that you can still have all that same old sailing action that you know and love. Honestly, I don't know who the hell those charts have been invented for. I really don't. I've never met someone yet who's like loved every minute of sailing that they wanted to add yet more sailing. They've upped the starting wallet to 500 rupees. Tingles now introduced as part of the main quest. Orca no longer knocks you down if you screw up the sword tutorial. There's all sorts of things like that. The Tingle statues no longer require Tingle bombs because they don't exist anymore. It's just regular bombs. Forest water lasts longer. There's just all sorts of daft things that have been added that, like, I can't believe they haven't been mentioned in any of the reviews that I've so far read or watched. There's even things with actions, like simple things that you wouldn't even believe make such a huge difference. There's sections where you're swinging on a rope. Before, you used to have to stop dead still and then turn and then swing in that direction. Now you can actually turn while you're on the rope already swinging. It's just things like that that makes it so much easier. Climbing a block is no longer an alternate command, so you'll just... It's one of them. It's the description I've got here. That's probably the best way to put it. Think Ocarina of Time, where you have to press to get into a block to get a climb command. Except in Wind Waker HD, it takes longer. So it's just one of them things. Things like that. They've streamlined and changed things and that. You can no longer snipe Mulgera's tongue out of the air using the hook shot. So they've changed all sorts of stuff for the better, for the worse, like to make the game easier, to make the game harder type thing. There's been loads of animation changes, and quite frankly I've already spent too long with changes to be reading out a full list of animation changes. So there is some things I'm going to skip about, but the animation changes, honestly, I don't think there's going to be that many people who care about that sort of thing. So, on to the Swift Sail, which I have mentioned it, and I've kind of glossed over it so far. It's basically, it like makes you twice as fast in the water. If I can actually find where my boat's parked. Well, I see it parked. I should have the right terminology. My dad's been a fisherman for like 50 years, so I should know the right terminology for when a boat is moored. But when it's moored, it's just like a boat, and you can go around and you can talk to it because it's also possessed by things. But it stays in the same place, so it doesn't just magically follow you, so it does mean that you have to find it, which is what I've done there. Anyway, this is the sail. So this is just like the regular sail that was on the regular game, and if I move to the map on the gamepad, which I'm going to have to show up on the screen, you can probably see just how slowly I am moving on that map. And this is how long the game used to take. It really did annoy the hell out of us. And it's also one of them with the sail. It's you have to be in the right direction of the wind as well, which it meant that you were constantly having to up and change the wind speed by using your Wind Waker. That's the whole point of it. And now with a Swift Sail, it doesn't matter, because you automatically move fast, like a lot faster than it regular, and you automatically move in any direction you want to. So the wind here is blowing southeast, and I'm currently moving southeast as well. I believe that's what that menu's saying. So I've now turned around, and I'm now going the exact opposite direction, and I'm still moving the same speed, even though the wind wasn't carrying me. So the Swift Sail does so many improvements, it's unbelievable. It speeds up the whole gist of the game, because you're no longer having to constantly whip out your Wind Waker and then play the song and then change the wind. You still need to do it when you're using one of the items, the leaf that allows you to glide and that, but it honestly doesn't matter now which way you put the wind. So it was east, to be fair, not southeast. It was blowing. So I was still, though, being able to move in that direction, which shouldn't be physically possible. So it's things like that that increases the sailing overall, and it's things that needed to be done, quite frankly, but I still don't think they've done enough, which is why I still really can't stand the game. the biggest problem I've always had with it is you might have heard of saying when it comes to players and that second act lag and things like that. Just like basically, whenever the second act, when you come back from the interval, it'll just be awful. And so many players have suffered from that in the past. And Wind Waker is probably the only game that I can think of that has that. Because it starts off all fine and well. You get a bit of story, you do a castle. Well, to be fair, you do a sub-dungeon, then you do a dungeon, then another dungeon. Then you go to a rock and you're given a pearl instead of doing the dungeon. That was then explained many years later, saying how they wanted to add a dungeon there, but they ran out of time. Then you put the pearls in a certain area. I'm trying to be as vague as possible here. And you get a dungeon, which then allows you to go to an alternate world to get the Master Sword. I've never understood then, since they came out and said that we apologise for there not being a dungeon there isn't any real need to put the pearls in, to then get a dungeon, to then go to the alternate world. There's just no need for it. Why couldn't they have instead put that dungeon, where you get the third pearl, then putting the pearls in, takes you to the other world? No one would have noticed that there was a dungeon missing then. No one would have had a go at it for that, and everyone would have been fine. So I've never really understood that. Then, after that, you get the Master Sword, you do the sub-dungeon that you did at the first place, but you do the other half of it. Which is why I call it a sub-dungeon, because as far as I'm concerned, you're not doing the full thing in one go, so it's not really a dungeon. You also don't get a boss key, so it's not really a dungeon. At best, it's a sub-dungeon. You then do that, you then get a couple other dungeons, and then you get well, to be fair, you get the couple dungeons and the TriForce quest at the same time, but you can do them in whatever order, really. But most people, as far as I'm aware, do the dungeons and then the TriForce quest. So on the last one, as I see it, you get 8 charts, and you had to go around and pay a fortune for these 8 charts, which made it even worse, because you were then constantly having to fight enemies and find enemies and get money which way that you could. Play the mini game that you throw letters in this actual section, to be fair, so I can at least show that, because I always struggle to show anything decent in a Zelda review, because it's like, what's a spoiler, what isn't a spoiler, and what's going to upset people, what isn't, and things like that. So I just tend to run around and look like a fool when doing so, and usually it's just by awesome, and I see it awesome when I mean awful, description powers that carry the review. So this is that little mini game anyway. I can't remember if you talk to him or the other person. It's the other person. Yep, not really. Yep, give it a go. So basically you have to throw the letters. You get the picture, so as you can see, that picture matches up there. You've got to throw them, and you get a rupee for every one that you do after a certain number on that. So you have to do pretty much anything possible. Grinding, I suppose, is the best way to put it, to get rupees to be able to buy all 8 charts. And then once you had the charts, you had to seal incredibly slowly to get the Triforce pieces. And then once you did all that, you got a boss dungeon, you fought Ganon, and that was the end of it. It was like the whole thing just went from being a pretty good Zelda game, I was enjoying myself, to one of the worst things I've ever played in the history of gaming, to the very end, where you just get one little thing at the end. It was terrible. Now, you get 5 pieces automatically. Well, not automatically, you still have to find the pieces. But you don't have to seal for them. The pieces are where the charts used to be. So they're on land, basically, or one's on a ghost ship, which I hope that wasn't a spoiler, but at the end of the day, when you get the chart that tells you, it does actually show one's on a ghost ship, and it's a case of you have to find the ghost ship. I'm not telling you where it is or anything, so don't worry about that. So now you get the 5 pieces in the chest, and then you only have to get 3 charts and seal for them 3. It is streamlined from one sense of the word. It could have been faster. Personally, I think it would have just been better if you didn't have to do any sealing at all to get them, which would then probably mean that they could have just wrote Tingle out, because his whole part of the game is kind of pointless, and I think it would have made the game a hell of a lot better. Granted, the thing that would have made the game absolutely awesome and would have quite frankly regarded this, I would have regarded this as the best Zelda in the history of all, would be instead of searching for 8 pieces, you get 8 more dungeons. I mean, that would have been awesome. I mean, kind of like A Link to the Past, where you got 3 dungeons, and then you went to Dark World and you got another 7 dungeons. I mean, if they'd done something like that with the Triforce pieces, it would have been awesome. Even if they'd done fewer Triforce pieces to accommodate for fewer dungeons, you know? So even if they'd done the Triforces broke into 6 parts instead of 8, which makes more sense, because then each one of the Triforces, the triangles, would have been broken in half. Even if, hell, they'd just done, you have to get 1 piece from 1 dungeon, so even if they'd just done another 3 dungeons, then it just would have been absolutely awesome. Quite frankly, I think the game would have been a hell of a lot better if they'd just pushed it back by like a year, and they'd added in these extra dungeons in places, because they already wanted to add another 2 in anyway, from what I've read. I definitely know of 1 where it would have been placed, the other one I'm not so sure. So even if they'd just done something like that, then it would have been really, really cool, and I would have probably loved the game. But instead, it's that whole quest, which is just absolutely awful. It's mind-numbing, it's monotonous, it's like watching this review 17 times in a row. It really is. I mean, once is bad enough, but having to search for 8 pieces really is annoying. It just takes a lot of fun out of the game, because it's, even though it's been streamlined, there's still so much sailing that needs to be done to get to the areas. You've got a song that can teleport you, but it can only teleport you to specific areas. Out of the map, which is 7 by 7, you can only actually teleport, I think, to possibly 10 unique locations. I'd have to get back in my boat and play the song, but I think you get a line of 3, a line of 3, and then a line of 2 and a line of 2 somewhere along the map, if I've remembered correctly. So it's just one of those things that it still is so drawn out, and it's why I absolutely hate the game, because it does quite a few things right. The combat is one of the best of any Zelda, if not the best. Personally, this is why I thought that combat would have worked properly in Skyward Sword if you had a controller. It's why I would love to see Skyward Sword HD announced. I really would, where you can use a Pro Controller or the gamepad. And it would make my absolute day if I could play that, because I can't stand the motion controls on it. And other than that, it's a fantastic Zelda game. It's as if someone could merge Skyward and Wind Waker, then you'd probably get a perfect Zelda game. But instead, I just can't stand. Well, I'm not going to say I can't stand Skyward Sword, I just can't. There's a few things I don't like about it, and I pretty much can't stand this, because there's only a few things I do like about it. But if you could replace the sailing of this with flying, and you could replace the motion controls with button controls, you'd have probably got 2 perfect Zelda games, if I'm honest. Because even the flying is done so much faster, and there's not really anything to distract you. Whereas with the sailing, there's all sorts of little things, and when I first got the game 10 years ago, or it might be 11 years now to be fair by the time this goes up, and I can't remember what the exact UK release date, but when I got it, I'd sit there and I'd just find myself getting bored, and then I'd look over and there'd be something that catches my eye, so I'd go and explore it, and then there'd be absolutely nothing there. I'd have got a few rupees and wasted about 15 minutes of my life. So then I'd sit there again, and I'd sit there again, and it got to the point, and this is why I absolutely love that you can play the game on the gamepad now. It got to the point that I would sit, put my controller to one side, pick up my GBA, and play A Link to the Past. And I'd actually managed to beat A Link to the Past in the time it took to sail in this game. There's that much sailing, I managed to beat a whole other Zelda game, just playing it in intermittent bursts, because all I had to do was set my sail up in the right place, set the wind up in the right place, and then I'd just go past it. And as you can see here, there's enemies, and the enemies aren't going to give me any bother. Even going past them slowly, they're not going to give me any bother. So I never needed to worry. I'd just have the volume up, so that if I heard some sort of noise and I thought, oh, I might have to look up and do something, but the majority of the time I'd just sit there and sail, and I'd play on my GBA. And now, with off TV player on the gamepad, Netflix is the saviour instead of the GBA and the Link to the Past, because now I'll just sit and I'll watch Netflix holding the gamepad in one hand and having the PS3 on the TV, which I'm aware is probably a tremendous waste of electricity, but I only continued playing the game in order to get the review done, because I told someone I would do it. Quite frankly, this game probably would have went after 5-10 hours of play on the first day. because I've managed to get myself one of these Nyko batteries, and that's why the gamepad didn't die after 3 hours. So I put a hefty amount of time into the first day, still couldn't stand it because of all the problems on it, and I just knew by the time I got up to that TriForce quest it was going to be even worse. And sure enough, I get up to the TriForce quest, I absolutely hated it. It's taken us longer to do it this time, I think, because I know the reward really is crap. You get one final boss dungeon-y thing, and you then beat the game, and part of the problem is I absolutely hated the story, and that's all opinion. That's, at the end of the day, that's what a lot of this vid's turning out to be. And there's a lot of people who say the story is great, and if you like it, and if you like the game, amazing, and I hope you do like it, and I hope you can enjoy it, and I hope if you're only buying it for the first time, you can find some fun with even the most mundane things, like the sailing. Trust me, if you think this has been boring to watch, this is like maybe 5 minutes of me sailing using a swift sail. Imagine playing the game on the GameCube without the swift sail, which speeds you up, and with having to do even more sailing because they've managed to remove some, and you still end up doing tons. I just don't know whose idea it was to do that and thought, well, that'll make a really entertaining and enthralling game. I swear down, someone needs to be fired for that decision, they really do, because it's just not fun. It really isn't. It would like be building a COD game and enabling a perk, autopilot. Congratulations, you've killed 10 people in a row, so now for the next 10 minutes a computer's going to control you while you watch. Who in their right mind would want something like that? And that's essentially what the sailing is. Because at least with riding a Pona over Hyrule, firstly, Hyrule was tiny compared to the sea, and secondly, you had to do things. I mean, there were a few things that you could do that would work. For example, you could pull out your bow and ride along. With this, you pull out your bow, your sail immediately stops. So you're stationary, and it's like, why? Why does that need to be there? I mean, honestly, why couldn't I just, like, leave it and use my bow while I'm riding along, so then I could at least shoot at things? And you can, it's the same with, like, a cannon. The cannon at least makes sense, I suppose, because of the design of the board, because it removes the sail. But I come to a dead stop when using it, so if I wanted to fight pirates, I couldn't even move while I did it. Something which is actually quite the staple of this sort of genre, where you ride around in boats. You can always move and fire at the same time. And the treasure thing, it's uninspired. At the end of the day, you go along, you find the coordinates, and then you just push and hold here until you hit it, and then you pull it up. There's just so many things that just make zero sense from a design point of view, that they're not exciting, they're not efficient, and because of that, it makes the whole second half of the game so boring, it's unbelievable, and it's why I've never been able to like it. And as I say, when I couldn't even get behind the story, because every one of the twists, and again, I'm not going to mention any of them, but every one of the twists you see coming a mile away, or at least I did. I didn't find the whole origin story type thing that they tried to do, saying how you were a descendant of someone and how this character was a descendant of someone, and I didn't find any of that stuff entertaining at all. I found myself just hitting the button to skip as fast as I could. There's loads of chart that are on the, like, things on the map that are shown. You might have noticed I've only actually got 4 areas. I originally had that completed on the GameCube days just because I had nothing else to play at the time. Basically, when you find a new area, you can find a fish and he'll write on the chart, and it'll just basically give you more stuff to look at on the map. And I had completed so much of that, and on this one I just thought, well, seeing as I didn't enjoy it last time, why do it this time? It's just things like that. All of the little stuff that is supposed to be entertaining just weren't. The side quests, as far as I'm concerned, are some of the worst side quests on a Zelda game ever. They're collectathons, and loads of people seem to have a go at me for this and say, well, they're not collectathons. How can you say they're collectathons? How are they collectathons? I mean, honestly. So, when I open my menu and go to my items, I go to my spoils bag. And the spoils bag are the spoils of war. And as you can see, I've got 7 items there currently, and I'm pretty sure I'm missing at least 1, if not 2, because I think the second row has a 4th, and then the bottom row I think only has one more because of the back arrow. As you can see, I've not really been going out of my way to collect these things, because I absolutely hated doing so the first time, but so many of the side quests revolve around collecting these things. In order to learn new abilities, collect XYZ of this. In order to do something else, collect XYZ of this. Oh, you must help me. Oh, excellent, a quest here. How can I help you? Please collect 15 of this. Fine. Oh, you've brought me 15 of this. Guess what? I now need another 20 of these. You what? Just, it bored the hell out of me, because it wasn't even a case of that you got them all of the time. It really was a case of trial and error, killing enemy after enemy after enemy, hoping that you'd get them, and and seeing as the enemies aren't exactly all over the place, because they're not on land, because there's no land, so, it's mainly sea. You've got to sail to a section of land to kill those enemies, and then sail to another section of land to kill those enemies. It bored the hell out of me. I just absolutely hated so much about this game that even the graphics, which I thought were beautiful, and the combat, which I thought was magnificent, didn't make up for how much I absolutely hated the game. In getting the HD version, I honestly hope that it will be different. I hope that there will be some things that made up for it, that some of the changes would work, but there's a few changes that they didn't do that I don't understand why they didn't do. Anyone who's played Ocarina of Time will know that it's now so much easier to use the iron boots, because instead of constantly having to equip the iron boots and that, on this, you've still only got the 3 slots, the iron boots are there, so you can't even have the iron boots on and then change something like what I've just done there, because that's one of the new features with the gamepad. You can push and hold on the touchscreen and swap your items over on the fly, which they say it means you spend less time in the menu, but not really, because you can't really stand around, fight, roll, dodge, zoom, sorry not zoom, lock on and change item at the same time. You'd have to have 3 arms to do so, really. So I don't understand it. You're still either way going to have to stop and take the time to do it. The only difference is you're not hitting the pause button before you do it. It's not really saving you that much time. And it would have been a hell of a lot better if, because it's a touchscreen, you could actually just touch the item and immediately get it in your hand. You could still hotkey some things maybe, so you could still have Y, X and R to have specific items, but if instead everything was laid out for you and you just touched it once and that would be it, you'd equip it, it would have just made it so much better, so much more streamlined. That would have made more sense, and it's something you could have done while moving around and fighting combat, because you could have quite easily used your thumbs. Because, I mean, I've got big hands, I understand I've got big hands, I'm a freak, not everyone has big hands, but as you can see, I can quite easily touch everywhere on this gamepad, so I could quite easily flick off the thumbstick and do that. And there's a lot of people out there who would probably be in the same boat as myself, so that would have saved time, that would have made it more streamlined instead of what they've done. And there's changes like that that I started to think, well, why didn't you do them when you did them in Ocarina? Because in Ocarina you had 2 touch buttons. Yeah, it was only 2, but it's still more than this has. There's no touch buttons on it, there's nothing I can touch to automatically equip an item, a la the steel boots or the iron boots or whatever, you know. So there's just things like that. For every upgrade that they've done, I've probably found another one that I'm thinking, well, why didn't they do? It almost feels like they've rushed it. Because, as I say, when there's things that are actually in one of their other upgraded versions, and things in their other Zelda games that are now staples, it makes me wonder why they're not there too. It's just, it's one of them. All I can really say is, I don't even know who this would cater to. If you absolutely hated the game like I did, I severely doubt the changes they've made are going to make you like it, because for all the people who say things are streamlined and faster, they're still too long as far as I'm concerned. If you absolutely adored the game, I don't know if you want to buy it, because unless you haven't played it in years and no longer own it, then there's not really going to be much need or want to actually play through it again or to experiencing new things. And if you already own the game on the GameCube, then I really don't think there's going to be enough additions to actually make you want it. And if you were on the fence about the game and you've never played it before, then, well, this is definitely the version to get, because the GameCube version is now inferior in comparison to it, and it still is relatively pricey, to be fair, on eBay and that, so you would probably be better off spending a little bit more to get the newer version with some new features, like the gamepad player and the better looking graphics and that, and the slight tweaks. So they're pretty much all I think this game caters to, because other than the absolute diehard who has to have every single version of every game that they'll love, I really can't see many fans of the game wanting this. It's the same as with Ocarina. There's a load of people who I know when Ocarina 3D came out said, well, I've already got the game. I mean, I had it on the N64, I got it free with Wind Waker, and I've got it now on the VC. The changes don't really do much other than graphics and a few streamlined things, so is there any point in me getting the 3D version? No, I'll happily live without it. I'll spend my money on something else, and I have a strong feeling that this is going to be the exact same, because I only bought Ocarina because I am an absolute die-hard fan of it. I absolutely adore the game. I've never made any sayings otherwise. I've never tried to hide it. It is my... Well, I would say it's my favourite game of all time, but there's actually another game that I might be about to review that might have overtaken it. So it's one of those that, as I say, that was only really for the diehards, and I think this is going to go the same way. Anyway, I've just realised this review has turned into a 30-minute rant, alongside a load of other things. My brother's already probably going to take one look at this and say, what the hell were you thinking? So I expect to receive around about 150 comments slating me, 150 downvotes within the first 5 minutes, and I don't care. At the end of the day, people asked. I never really wanted to do this vid ever in the history of. It's the same with why I'll never do a Halo vid, because honestly, if you think I've been bad with this, I truly do detest Halo. There's not even anything I can praise Halo about, not even the music. I can't stand it, I really can't. So I will never do that vid, and I never really wanted to do this one, but someone asked and said, what's your honest opinions on what the differences are? I absolutely loved the game anyway, so I just wanted to know, has it been able to convert you? So I said I'd do it. I've done it. And any backlash I get, I don't really care, because I'll probably just not even bother responding to a lot of the comments, if any of them. So there we go then. That's been the review. I hope you found it helpful. I don't score the games because that's based purely on opinion, so instead I'll leave you to make your own mind up. So thanks for watching, and if you've got any questions about the game that I didn't answer in the vid or that hasn't been answered in the comments, then feel free to ask and I'll help if I can. Also, if you did find it helpful, don't forget to check out my channel, because there's plenty more like this up there, and don't forget to subscribe because there'll be plenty more to come as well. So until next time, this has been Demon212, signing off.